refusal to take orders. So,
but I think it wasn't
I
even,
had a
I mean, you're
woman.
pointing out it's not even always orders. So right now what I'm showing is
No.
the signs that I have for our prayer group on campus now, which I'm saying we're the control group. And even though they've taken
Yes.
they took the mandates off that we have to test weekly if we're not registered in their system as
Mm.
vaccinated. And I said, the small numbers of people, one day we're going to get, the crowd. No, it's like I never got a crowd. I got,
Mm.
people now that I'm this is what I am, continuing to worry about. And you're worried about, it doesn't matter that the mandates are gone now, because
Mm.
the human tendency to bring them back is still there. And we were fighting about this in my chat, which is how
Yes.
we ended up deciding to do this particular stream tonight rather than some others that we are equally explosive that we could actually still talk about. um Wondering why can't we just forgive everyone for making, socially forcing everyone to go along by shaming them and making them feel uncomfortable. Just like,
Mm.
because this is, I mean, I kept wanting to say, it's like, well, as how does a Christian do it? Because this is how Jesus ended up crucified. The crowd goes
Mm.
along with it because they're, the various levels of which is it. But how do you end up with, now I've got the one COVID to rule them all ring up. This is my one meme, and it didn't show back up in I'm sorry it didn't circulate widely enough for it to come back around to me in my trawling today. The um the way Sauron ruled was wanting to control others' wills, but the control of the
Yes.
wills is completely in your own. I mean, that's quite literally the one thing we have that's free is our choice.
Yes. I mean, people wanted to control other people's breathing.
Mm.
And now that's a scary thing for somebody to admit to themselves. Like whether or not this Atlantic article author
Mm.
really has had a moment to think about this deeply. But for 2 years, everybody had the power to control and regulate another person's breath.
Yeah.
It's satanic. And if there is any kind of moment where people are able to sit down and think about exactly how addicted to that they they were, they have to go through that wonderful hall of mirrors of looking at their own sadomasochistic tendencies, which a lot of people haven't gone down that hole, and probably never will, because it's quite dark to admit that you're capable of doing that kind of thing. So again, it's like, oh, it was a mandate. It's a mandate. We're policing the mandate. We're enforcing the mandate because it's the rules, because this is what everyone needs to do. And don't you want to keep us all safe? Instead of just really understanding the whole in a second, you've got control over my intake of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even slavers, like buying Bantu Africans out of the Congo and taking them onto boats, never had that level of control over their own slaves
Well, that's why
to
with the
cut off
belly
their
dancer
oxygen
mask, right?
supply.
That's a
Yeah,
harem. The women, the slave women of the
yeah,
harem. I mean, Casey is saying,
yep.
I was screamed at in the street when maskless. Mask hole. This was from an elderly woman. I mean, and I'd say women, of course, we are the ones that make society work. The Karens work on both sides. But we're also the ones that hopefully can break out of that and say, stop it.
Well, I was really disappointed in the prostitutes.
That's
Personally,
going
I
that's going to end up
expected
in the
better.
clips.
Yeah. I want a better quality of whore. I was really disappointed. They make good money. We all know they make good money. They're independent, ran businesses that didn't close down a single day.
Oh.
They were politically protected by the state. Because, of course, that's kind of a thing in one of the Australian states. They had their profession authorized as a profession, right? They were in a great social position to stand up and say, what the hell are you doing to your people? With nothing to lose. It's not like they're going to lose business. Nobody's never going to want oh, she's got the wrong political opinions. I don't want to have sex with her anymore. Come on. Like, do you know what I mean? No, they had zero risk. None. You're already a whore. What are you going to lose? And yet they didn't say anything. And one of the politicians in the state of Victoria is an ex-prostitute. And she was one of the most ardent and unfeeling enforcers of all of these mandates.
Okay, there's a clue in
the
there.
Whole country.
There's definitely a clue in there of what's going on.
Tell me.
Well, I need to think about it because what? No, that brothel, Silent Draco, brothels are our parliament, but on the other side of the blanket. I'm continuing. It's like as we're going, I'm going through the memes, and here's Christ being crucified. I have a family to feed. He didn't do what they told him to. If I don't do this, I'll get fired. I'm just following orders. My boss told me to. I have to think of my future. Right, that's a classic. It's a modern picture showing the crucifixion, but it's a classic medieval understanding of our sins did it, but the sins and the excuses that people keep making. I mean, and I know, and I wrote about this. I remember it. I've lived through it. I am really upset that the feeling of what we were fighting has dissipated. Because I know it's not gone. I know it's still somehow out there and can be activated again.
People need to understand what they've done to the younger generation. I think that's where it's going to come from. It's the only way. It's the only way I can see everybody pivoting from complete denial and getting activated again.
But this woman, the woman who did the Atlantic article, it seems she has children, and two, in her own mind, had been standing up for the children, even though now she's trying to say, oh, we need to move on and not be blaming everybody. I mean, you and I, whatever we're saying right now, is we need to understand what we just witnessed. The quote civilization go through. I mean, it's interesting with Jesus's crucifixion because, of course, that was the peak of civilization in the period that he lived, that he became incarnate in. It's like this world empire surrounding the Mediterranean, the most advanced law and tech and communications and arts and crafts and government and so forth. I mean, the Romans are otherwise, except for when you're reading the Gospels, the Romans are greatly admired for their engineering capability and their government structures, and even some parts of Europe still live under Roman law in various forms, and we pray with Latin, for goodness sake, and it happened then too. So this civilization is no guarantee of its own ability to withstand its own barbarism. And I think maybe that's where we want to go with this. I'm bugged by her claim that we should forget about it because I don't think we understand what happened, and she has this we don't want to repeat history kind of thing, and I'm like, we don't understand. We certainly haven't. I think some of this is starting to come out gradually. We're far enough away from World War II that people are starting to wonder, have we told the full story properly? They're elements of things that we've never looked at, that we haven't considered as problems, and they were too horrible for people to consider immediately after they happened, and they're still not capable of looking at them now because they may show us things we don't want to see.
No one sees themselves putting on a uniform and trampling children in the street. I don't know. It's just it's a crazy thing to describe. I see people here very differently now. There were parents with prams, little like wheelie pushy things that you put your babies in, and they were running from semi-armed police officers, during those protests.
And you were
kids got pepper sprayed
mandates, right? You're protesting vaccine mandates.
It was the lockdowns. The majority of the protesting that happened in Australia was against the lockdowns because the lockdowns were indefinite. There was no end in sight. They kept letting everybody out, then announcing another one, putting everyone back inside.
But
I don't know what
without, I mean, no. But
what was
you're
your
saying nobody was dropping dead in the streets, and people, you'd have those big street protests, and you wouldn't have another Black Death. I mean, we had never had any Black Death. There was no Black Death. No Black Death was involved.
Yeah. No, it was the numbers. The numbers say we have to go inside. We have too many cases, so the numbers were too high, or we're expecting another surge, so we need to circuit break. They called it a circuit breaker. I mean, it was a soul breaker. So there were all these parents at home that had been homeschooling their kids, which wasn't the case because they weren't free to do whatever they wanted. They had to be on a laptop all day, every day, for over a year.
Do you know? I mean, those everybody watching. There's a number of you, right? It's really hard to stare at this camera and sit within this frame and perform for this. You know, it's like you're sending your soul attention down a fiber optic cable. You're minimizing yourself into this photon. Yeah, it's actually quite stressful.
Yeah. They did it for
stressful.
They did it for 6 hours a day for over a year. And this is with no social contact, no physical contact. I mean, it's a kind of deprivation. You know, you look at the I compared it to the story of those Romanian orphans, you know, during that kind of weirdness in Romania, and they held all of these kids that had been adopted and put in these orphanages. So their basic needs are taken care of, but they just don't have the love vitamins and, you know, the human touchy-feely stuff. They all end up because they've been deprived. So all of the kids in Australia are going through some kind of similar situation where they're being deprived of things that are basic psychological and spiritual nutrition and losing their minds. So the parents say, okay, well, we can't handle it anymore. You have to stop the lockdown. So when people are looking at footage of protesters in the street, running, being chased, being, you know, they were hunted, basically. I mean, there were helicopters in the sky patrolling suburbs all across the east coast of Australia, making sure that people were not out disobeying the lockdown mandates. But this is the reason why people were in the streets. They'd done over 12 months in lockdown. People couldn't handle it anymore.
Okay, and the more we talk about this, it's like I cannot believe it happened. It lasted so long, right? I guess at the time, what we were being told we were waiting for the vaccines. Was that how was it that we managed to? And always this terror of if you let the lockdown shut down instantly, the Black Death is going to hit, and we're going to end up in bodies in the street. Everybody's going to drop dead.